I don't like to complain, but on the day I'm supposed to speak in church, the church is surrounded in fog. It's like, okay, and I know amongst you there are comedians, you know, they're scattered about, but they're like everywhere. And I'm sure they're saying, Norm, every time you speak in church, it's surrounded in fog. Matter of fact, you're a carrier of the fog. It follows you around. We don't know what you said at the end. So, but speaking of the fog, you know, when Bill Howe heard that I was speaking about the Tao, he came right over to me and he wanted like some tips for his stock in his 401k. So I said, no, you know, he's such a nice guy. I didn't want to let him down. So I gave him a few tips about, well, you know, it's kind of overvalued. Strengthen your cash position and hold the rest. Well, whether or not these anecdotes are correct is irrelevant, you know, because it illustrates the point when you confuse the Tao Te Ching with the Dow Jones. This is something that could happen to anybody. It only happened to you, Bill, now, but so don't feel like you're the only one, no. But the idea is that it shows that there is a tendency when there's something new presented, is trying to take the new stuff and stuff it into the old stuff. So you have a traditional way of thinking, if presented with a new way, you have to like convert it. It's automatically this instinctual process. But I took a class in phenomenology, believe it or not. It was great, by the way. And the phenomenology teacher said, well, you know, phenomenology is not the usual way we think of things. So why don't you, when you take this class, set aside your usual way of thinking and enjoy this new way of thinking. And after the end of it, you can, if you want, you can have your old way of thinking back. And I thought, that's a pretty good deal. So today we're going to talk about from readings and discussion from the ancient Chinese philosopher and savant Lao Tzu. He tells us that the Tao is the source of all things, and all things return to it. And he assures us that the real and eternal Tao cannot be spoken. And especially, he says, it cannot be taught. He also says, those who try to teach it don't know. So, given that our task is fraught with danger and doomed to failure, we can go forward with a certain amount of freedom. Just because you can't teach the Tao doesn't mean you can't grasp it. Okay, John, you're on.
Doomed to failure. Nice. First reading. 30 spokes converge on a single spot, giving strength to the wheel. The hole in the middle allows it to pull the cart. From a lump of clay, we make a vessel. It is the emptiness within that makes it useful. The timbers of your home are strong. They keep out the wind and rain. We cut holes in them for windows and doors. We live in the empty rooms they create. Strength comes from what is there. Usefulness comes from what is not.
Speaking of the fog, okay, so the reading, it's the hole in the middle of the wheel that makes it useful. The emptiness of the vessel is the source of its usefulness. We cut holes in the doors and windows to make the strength of the building useful. Wow. No wonder the Tao is difficult to talk about and difficult to grasp, and it can't be spoken. But when faced with an impossible task, I remember a story that my friend Henry told me a long time ago. He has since passed. Henry was an engineer, and he retired, and one day he was working in his garden. This is before cell phones, and his wife comes out and says, Henry, you know, they want you to go to work now. They want you to go to Texas right now. So he says, well, I'm retired. I'm not going to Texas right now. I'll go to Texas tomorrow morning. So he living in Rhode Island, he goes over to the airport, flies first class to Texas, gets picked up at the airport, and is brought to this major development, 5 stories high. At the major development, no one is working. Everyone is sitting down. They think that they're faced with what's impossible. He gets on the service elevator, goes up to the 5th floor, steps out the 5th floor, and says to the project manager, "What is your problem?" The manager says, "No, it's obvious. It's obvious." "What do you mean it's obvious?" He says, "Well, there's a steel beam right here, and the air conditioning duct is going right towards it." So Henry looks at it and says, "Well, someone has made a mistake. Could be the construction people, could be the architect, so why don't you go around it?" So he gets back on the elevator, goes down the elevator, goes out for a big Texas steak, flies home first class, and sends them a big bill. When something seems impossible, why not we try to go around it? People will say, again, amongst the comedians out there, will say, "Norm, you always go around everything. I don't really know. It's hard to follow sometimes." But I thought maybe there's something in our own language and our own experience that would suggest what the Tao is. So actually, I took Greek, okay? So I'm not going to brag because I had to take it twice to get to pass. So, but I wondered sometimes, we talked about phenomenology. Is biology, geology, psychology, zoology, mixology is my favorite, you know. It's like, why is everything an ology? So ology comes from ho logos, which means the way. So perhaps in our own language, in the words that we use all the time, there's a suggestion that the way, the biology, the way of life, geology, the way of the earth, psychology, the way of the psyche, zoology, the way of the animals, etc., maybe we are using this concept of the way all the time. And maybe the way, the Tao, is hiding in plain sight all the time. Everything has a way. The Tao is best translated as the sacred way. It's almost like Joan and I have rehearsed this, but so the first reading talks about the emptiness and the value of emptiness. Again, not quickly grasped, I don't think. So we cut holes in what is and live in the empty spaces they create. And the emptiness of the vessel, some vague reference to Dave's pottery, I think, you know, this the empty part of the pot or the mug, that's where the use comes from. So what is it about the emptiness? And how can we grasp that, even if it can't be told directly? It's not that difficult, because if we just look at the way we speak to each other, the value of emptiness becomes perfectly clear. This is a story I told before. story of being in class in Toronto where a person with addiction was being discussed. The teacher presented a person that has an addiction, goes to the hospital, goes to her parents, goes back to the boyfriend who's on drugs, and goes to the band, and they do too many drugs. He ends up back at the hospital, this cycle of addiction. In the class, there are 12 people, all of whom have at least a master's degree. And 11 of them automatically say, well, she has to get a job, her parents have to stop enabling her, she got to get rid of the boyfriend, she can't be part of the band, she can't do this. It's like the prescription pad automatically came out. Now, those sound correct. Those are correct responses, okay, and by caring people. But they ignore one thing, is that not one person, and from the first 11, said, well, maybe we should speak to the person about addiction and how they got that way. It's also foolish to presume that you simply tell an addict that they have to get a job or get new friends, establish a new culture. Like, yeah, these things just roll off, and they only show our own foolishness. So this actually, while it happened in class, it did happen to me personally. Somebody came from detox to see me, God knows why, because their mother sent them. I knew somebody knew somebody. So when they came, they had this, I've been to my friends, I have a band, and I say, oh my God, I feel like I've seen this before. And this is what I said. I said, well, and the person then did a litany. My father says this, my mother says that, my sister says this, my AA guy says that. And I said, well, you know what? I don't know what you're supposed to do, but you have to tell me what you can do and then get to what you're supposed to do. Empty space. You have to tell me, and then I shut up. Hard to believe. I shut up. Henry Nouwen says, when someone comes to you to talk in your living room, take all the furniture out. Just put one chair so that you are empty, so that they can talk to you. A normal way of speaking is, okay, I got a cataract. Oh, I had a cataract. Oh, I got my gallbladder out. I had a gallbladder out. My Lipitor, has been doubled. Oh, my Lipitor is out. Oh, my statin. No. Our common way of speaking is just like a tennis match. But this is the common, automatic way that we speak. That we associate. Okay, we quickly associate back and forth. Which is fine. It's necessary. You can't give it up. But it can get out of balance. We only associate, and you cut off other information that could be given to you. This way of speaking is satirized in the movie Jaws. I don't remember the sheriff bumps his head and he's bleeding a little bit, and the crusty old captain says, oh, that's just temporary. I got this. Look, I lost a tooth. That's permanent. Some guy says, oh, I got a scar over here. And another guy lifts his leg and shows it over here. Now, these guys are drunk and drinking. They're having a great time. So they're quickly associating. Okay. Then finally, somebody says, gee, what's that on your arm? And the guy, a moment of silence. And the guy says, well, it had a tattoo there. Of course, somebody says, oh, it must be your old girlfriend. Oh, no. The guy says, no, I was on the Annapolis. The Annapolis was a boat that sank. The sailors were stranded for a few days, and the sharks had a feast day. It was okay. In the quiet interruption of this quick association, the healing came out and the pain came out. So you've all had experiences where you did not feel heard, and those experiences require an empty space in order to come out. Okay, John.
Okay, the second reading today is about the Taoist rainmaker. There was a severe drought. The crops were dying, the animals malnourished. Nothing worked. The Christians held processions. The Taoists burned incense. Guns were fired into the air to scare away the demons. In a panic, the leaders of the village went to the village elder and asked what they should do. The elder told them that they must go and summon the Taoist rainmaker. A few days later, an old man arrived. When he arrived at the village, he asked only for a small hut outside the village where he could be alone. After 2 days, he emerged from the hut only to go back in. He spoke to no one. On the 4th day, the rains came. When asked how he made it rain, he said only, "I come from a place where we live in the Tao. I only waited until I was in the Tao. Then the rains came naturally. I did not make it rain." But I did make it thunder.
Excuse me, I tell the jokes, please. This is one of our comedians, you know, okay. I know him, this is not my first encounter. Okay, there are troubles everywhere. You turn on a TV, okay, any time of the day, turn to your favorite news program, problems. And so today, it seems foolish initially to talk about the Taoist principle of inaction. You could say, well, Norm, isn't that contrary to who you are? Aren't you like one of these like activists? Didn't you work in housing? And didn't you do like the fundraiser, you know, the shoddy shingles, you know, we had to replace them. And don't you work at a food pantry? It's like, yeah, those things I do. But that's not all that any of us do. Let's look at the text a little carefully. I'm going to turn to it so I don't mess up. There's a severe drought, okay? What does the Taoist not do? He does not go to all the plants and say, oh yeah, that one's dying, and that one's dying, and that one's dying, and that's dying, and that animal's malnourished. He doesn't tour the village and endlessly sort of go over, I was going to say regurgitate, the problems of the drought. It's like, okay, probably as soon as he gets there, the drought is self-evident. And it's like the Christians and the Taoists, they do things that they, you know, they try their rituals and stuff like that, and nothing really seems to work. In order to understand the basics of this, you have to think about the airplane. Say the airplane is the smoke in the cabin of the airplane. What do they recommend? They recommend that you take your oxygen and put it on your own face and breathe. Breathe first. So he doesn't call the National Weather Bureau. He doesn't dig a well or call Walmart and ask for truckloads of water. He does not assume the responsibility for the rain. It's like those therapists, at that class. They all assumed that they were responsible for the answer. First and fundamental mistake is they would not respond. When there's a list of problems, you can do what actually I still do sometimes, but a lot less. You can wake up in the morning, put the TV on, and get a half an hour of problems, go do some stuff, put the TV back on, get a few more minutes of problems, put it during the afternoon, before your nap, okay, more problems, and go at nighttime. You can hear discussions of how the policy should be dealt with for those problems. This is not breathing, and it's eventually toxic. So, the Taoist rainmaker seems to create the rain without doing anything. So, I thought, I've had 2 experiences of that, where I seem to create something without doing anything. Let's go back to the shoddy shingles example. You could say, well, Norm, didn't you ask people for money and raise money to fix the exterior of the church? And the answer is yes and no. This is what I did. It's sort of a Taoist way of doing things. I asked people, have you heard of this problem? They said yes. Then I asked them, what are you thinking? I didn't ever ask anybody for money. I asked people, what are you thinking? And they would tell me. Most people said, oh, yeah, I've heard this problem, I'm going to help. Some people said, this is the worst possible time to ask for some money, I can't. And it's like, okay, or, I just don't know, I'll get back to you. No matter what they said, I said yes. And there was no debate about anything. Everything was a yes. This is not how we generally do things. And the church got fixed. The money came. People said, congratulations, Norm, great job. And like, really? I don't know. Okay, now we're going to talk about the pantry. How can we not talk about the pantry? The government decided that we could not afford to give people money for their food stamps, SNAP benefits. So we're going to stop. At least they stopped for a while. They were going to start, then they stopped. So after a while, it was hard for me to answer. You getting benefits or not? I don't know, because it depended on the day. So what did we do at the pantry? There's 3 people who spend roughly 20 hours a week at the pantry. So, well, come over here. And I said, well, things are going to be bad. Let me get a drink. Things are going to be bad. Let's open another day. And at this meeting, people said, yeah, we'll open another day. Now you would think that we had committee meetings, board meetings, fundraising meetings, meetings. None of that is true. We didn't do anything else. Nothing, nada, zero, rien, nothing. We don't do anything else. So we open another day. I call it like poker players, and you're out there too. We open on guts. So what happened is this girl, the scouts who normally collect several truckloads of food said, we'll have a drive. And then, Dave and I came to the pantry, came around the corner. Every parking place everywhere was full of cars with food. All morning, cars and trucks arrived with food. 12 businesses called and said, we're going to collect food for the pantry. Donations came from the internet. One person from California, $1,000 from somebody in California. I don't know, it's okay. So it rained food. And what did we do? We said, we'll be open. Creating a space for the goodness of others to come forward is as important as all the things you do. Now, this is a balancing talk, not like, okay, everybody stop everything. It's like, no, keep doing all the things you're doing, but create a balance by using emptiness, using waiting, using everybody has a hut that they go to. Before I went volunteer for the pantry, I spent 3 months looking at different things. Oh, and I don't want, no. And then I found that thing, or it found me. It was like, that's what I'm going to do. That was my empty space. We all have an empty space. It is, in a way, the empty space that's going to keep you alive. Our closing words today come from the wizard Gandalf, whose address, I believe, is Middle-earth. At Middle-earth is having a time of war, and Middle-earth is besieged by evil dragons, trolls, orcs, and monsters, powerful monsters of every kind. And the Hobbit is thinking, oh, we're quite doomed. Gandalf addresses the Hobbit's dilemma and says, the Hobbit, of course, is the weakest and smallest, seemingly the most insignificant tribe in the Middle-earth. The Hobbit says, I wish none of these things had happened. Why do we live in such troubled times? I wish I was not born in these times. Gandalf replies, so do all who live in such times. But it is not for us to decide. We only decide what we do with the time we have. Saruman believes that evil can only be held back by great power. I do not agree. I believe that the small things can hold back evil. Small acts of love and kindness keep evil at bay. The force of evil is not the only force working in the world. And so today, I offer that empty space and avoiding frenetic action and sometimes reverting to inaction can lead us to an awakening of the presence of such a powerful, loving force. Thank you.